Spirit teaching. All of these ones are going to be like the retweets from the lobby because it's a different set of people, but they're not the same as the principal people, somewhat the same. Are you with me? So Miss Spirit has it. I'm going to go tell them we're officially ready.
Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is a breaking. Sun is a rising in my soul. Oh well, yonder come day, day is a breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day. Day is a breaking, sun is a rising in my soul. Oh well, yonder come day, day is a breaking, yonder come day. Oh my soul, yonder come day, day is a breaking, sun is a rising in my soul. Yonder day, day is a breaking, yonder day. Oh my soul, yonder day is breaking, sun is rising in my soul. Yonder day, day is arising in my soul. The trees are green and the air is sweet. The birds are singing underneath my feet. I point my feet down the green line. Walking that road, I'm feeling fine. Yeah, gonna come day, day is breaking. Gonna come day, oh my soul. Gonna come day, day is breaking. Sun is rising in my soul. Yonder come day, day is breaking. Yonder come day, oh my soul. Yonder come day, day is breaking. Sun is rising in my soul.
Depends on the year, which happens to be what musicians we're working on. And this year I actually kind of let it go for a while because we were so happy to have it here. But our musician of the month usually for August and September. Typically, more influential person because I like to add a little bit of August and September last year was Theo. And we began working on yesterday. And we had a student who was at home and started working on it on piano on her own. And come to find out was one of the things that came to school. So I asked her to be our piano accompaniment. So when Emily Hino is on piano, then we will be singing yesterday. Sure.
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Suddenly, I'm not half the man I used to be. There's a shadow hanging over me. Oh, yesterday came suddenly. Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. I said something wrong. Now I want for yesterday. Yesterday. Such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say. I said something wrong. Now I long for yesterday. Yesterday. Love was such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I believe in yesterday.
And I'm just realizing that I did not introduce our soloists on the first piece. So we had Nora, Brooke, and Zoe on our first piece. And some of their readers were upper classmen today. If we have a third grader, those obviously will come and be different and a little bit more. Our next song for you is entitled Peace Crown. And it kind of honors the fact that it's getting closer during this time of year, and the winter, of course, we're in the northern hemisphere right now. And in the winter, also in the southern hemisphere, they have some similar traditions where when the light goes away, it's a time to slow and to have things be more reflective and internal about what it is that we
Stuffing folders, keeping the children in order, Band-Aids when they're in the middle of rehearsal, getting the kids to the restroom, feeding them a snack, checking them in, all of these things, and also a partnership with the Colorado Children's Chorale. So Miss Libby Cotton is our associate conductor. I'm not sure where she went, but thank you, Miss Libby. Donna Fredrickson over here is a retired music teacher who's a grandmother in our community and helps. And then Melody is our accompanist from Bear Creek High School and comes and volunteers to be our accompanist. So I just want to having us today. Yay.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the regular board meeting of December 15th, 2022 to order. I'd also like to thank our live simultaneous Spanish interpreters for joining us tonight. We are live streaming the meeting, and you can find that link on the district website. Also, we had the Kendrick Lakes Choir and their director, Danielle Bayer, here to sing for us, and it was wonderful. So thanks to them for their beautiful performance, getting us all in a wonderful spirit and mood for the holiday season. It's just always phenomenal to have students here at our board meetings. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there a motion to approve tonight's meeting agenda?
I move to approve the agenda for the regular board meeting of December 15th, 2022 as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda for the regular board meeting of December 15th, 2022 as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Lang.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Barta?
Yes.
The agenda is approved. All right, moving on to one of this board's favorite things to be able to do, which is honors recognitions and proclamations. The Jeffco Board of Education is proud to issue proclamations that honor our schools and community organizations and that highlight issues aligned with our district's mission, vision, values, and strategic plan. Proclamations can be read in full on the district's website. This month, we have issued proclamations in recognition of National Special Education Day and National Computer Science Education Week. So please do, in your abundant free time, go online and read those proclamations to recognize those occasions. The Jeffco Board's governing statement reads that Jeffco students need and deserve a robust academic enrichment and social emotional program that challenges them to grow and that prepares them for college, for careers, and for community life. Tonight, we are proud to honor students, staff, and community organizations that personify and embody our governing statement. Our recognitions are aligned with 4 priorities: our learners, our future; our people, our strength; and our communities, our legacies. I am proud, very proud, to present our Jeffco Thrives honoree, and we will be recognizing, move over to my second pile of papers, Sally Mills, who's principal of Fairmount Elementary School in the National Blue Ribbon Schools program. If you'd like to join us up here while I talk about you to make it as awkward as possible for you to have to stand there, you deserve it all, so it's fine. The first celebration of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased to acknowledge the work accomplished by Principal Sally Mills at Fairmount Elementary School on being awarded the Blue Ribbon Award for our Jeffco Thrives recognition. The National Blue Ribbon Schools program recognizes public and private elementary, middle, and high schools, and the recognition is based on the school's overall academic excellence or their progress in closing achievement gaps among student subgroups. Every year, the U.S. Department of Education seeks out and celebrates great schools, ones demonstrating that all students can achieve to high levels. The coveted National Blue Ribbon School Award affirms the hard work of students, educators, families, and communities in creating safe and welcoming schools where students master challenging and engaging content. Fairmount Elementary was recognized for overall academic excellence. Fairmount bested state averages on literacy and math tests last year and is one of 297 schools across the country to earn this prestigious award in 2022. Fairmount is one of only 4 Colorado schools to be named a Blue Ribbon School in 2022. The school is a wonderful place to learn and teach because of the positive and healthy school culture that is based on the belief that everyone belongs and is valued. Principal Mills was asked what sets Fairmount apart from other schools. She described how the teachers' collaboration in their professional learning communities over the past 6 years has bolstered them and subsequently the whole school community. Please join us in celebrating Fairmount Elementary's principal, Sally Mills, and her leadership, along with the entire staff, for their well-deserved recognition. I've never tripped running back up here, and I just said that because I thought about it when I did it. All right, now I will turn it over to Director Miller, who will present our learners, our future honorees.
Thank you very much, President Schooley. So we're talking about this evening our all-star cheerleaders from Alameda International High School. For our next celebration of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased to recognize 2 students selected as all-star cheerleaders at the Summer Spirit Express West Camp as a part of our learners, our future recognition. Could Clarissa Molina Salazar and Liana Chavez please come to the front of the boardroom so we too can make them feel?
Yes.
Okay. Just go first. The Alameda International School cheer team participated in the Spirit Express West cheerleading camp this past summer. During the camp, the participants learn new material, choreography, and steps taught by the instructors and are judged on their performance and work ethic. All-star cheerleaders who display superior technique and learners are named on the final day of camp. Clarissa and Liana earned the honor of being named All-Star Cheerleaders. This recognition also included an invitation to the 95th Macy's Day Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City. I don't believe they were able to make it, but it's still quite the honor to be able to be selected to attend. Clarissa, a senior, is the team captain and has been part of the team for 2 years. Her cheer coach, Rachel Fetcher, mentioned that Clarissa has done a great job leading the team and dedicated to represent Alameda International. She is a kind person who helps the team be the best that they can be. Liana is a sophomore and in her 2nd year on the team. She is also dedicated to helping the team be the best that they can be and is always willing to try new things, says Coach Fisher. Performing stunts and being a flyer is what she loves to do. Let's give a huge round of applause, please, to Clarissa and Liana for their dedication, hard work, and leadership. We are so very, very proud of them.
And I want to know what a flyer is. Good job!
I will turn it over to Director Reed to present our People, Our Strength honorees.
Next, the Board of Education honors the principals from the 16 schools that are part of the Phase 1 Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools closures. You truly are our people, our strength. Could all of you please join us at the front of the boardroom? So all of our principals who are here. So as I read these names, if you guys can just give a little wave to Director Varda so that she knows who to give each certificate to. Kristen Hyde, Bergen Meadow Elementary. Lara Wyant, Campbell Elementary. Karen Pratt, Colorado Elementary. Lisa Mahana, Emory Elementary. Kevin Colassa, Glennon Heights Elementary. Thomas Gardner, Green Mountain Elementary. Cheryl Clay, Color Strand Elementary. Jim McKenney, Mulholm Elementary. Michael Zweifel, New Classical Academy at Vivian. Kristen Enney, Parr Elementary. Deborah Pierce, Peck Elementary. Molly Tour, Pfeiffer Elementary. Valerie Braganetz, Sheridan Green Elementary. Lisa Nicholson, Thompson Elementary. Janice Fisher, Wilmore Davis Elementary. Shaylee McDougall, Witt Elementary. We had the pleasure of sharing a meal with this group of leaders prior to tonight's meeting. And as a board, we want to thank you for the leadership, strength, and grace you've displayed to the entire Jeffco community during this difficult time. There is no recognition that can appropriately show our appreciation for you and your commitment to our students, staff, and families at your school. You have worked tirelessly with your community and district leadership while also participating in FCB committees, public hearings, and community conversations. Your resilience, leadership, compassion, and teamwork exemplify all 5 Jeffco Public Schools values: focus on students, excellence, equity, integrity, and belonging. We want to thank each of you for the hard work you've done and will continue to do. Please join us in the deep appreciation we have for these outstanding leaders.
All right, over to Director Parker for our communities, our legacy honorees.
For the final celebration of the evening, the Board of Education is pleased to acknowledge the work accomplished by the NASA Hunch Design and Prototyping Program within Jeffco Schools for our communities, our legacy recognition. Could David Schlichting? All right. Boy, I tell you, those NASA people, they get there, don't they? The Colorado Mines mentor of the NASA Hunch Design and Prototype Program. Other individuals that we would like to recognize tonight include Stacy Hale, founder of Hunch, Glenn Johnson, lead engineer for design and prototype, Allison Westover, lead engineer for health and biomedical and lead engineer for culinary. NASA Hunch, and I'm sure you've been wondering what Hunch is. High Schools United with NASA to Create Hardware is headquartered at the Johnson Space Center in Houston and was founded 16 years ago as a means of providing high school students new educational experiences by producing hardware training items for the International Space Station. Today, the program has grown to well over 200 schools across 44 states, serving over 2,500 students with a variety of projects ranging from industrial sewing to an astronaut culinary challenge. So we've come a long way since Tang. Through Hunch, students have a unique opportunity to learn skills and make a real-world contribution to NASA's space missions. David began the Hunch Extreme Science program at Eagle Crest High School in 2012 and served as director until retiring in 2018. In 2015, the Eagle Crest team was selected for the best science experiment in the U.S., and the experiment was selected to fly to the International Space Station for an extended microgravity study. Hunch is considered by many as the preeminent STEM program for high school students in the United States. David served as a volunteer NASA Hunch mentor before getting a full-time paid position as a member for Colorado Schools in 2021. As a mentor, David works with the program directors to develop the curriculum and the development of student projects, while also working with students and teachers on projects for the design and prototype program and the health and biomedical program. Jeffco has been a key participant in the design and prototype program for more than a decade and has consistently had more students selected for annual, final, and I've lost my second page. For annual final design review than any other district in the country. Students have built more than 1,300 items that have flown to the International Space Station. That could not happen without Jeffco's awesome teachers, including Nate Olson, Warren Tech Central, Matt Brown, Warren Tech North, Joel Bertelson, Chatfield High School, and Ashley Pedersen, Lakewood High School. Please join us in recognizing the entire NASA Hunch team and David Schlichting, who make this partnership an incredible success. Jeffco is grateful for this programming and the positive impact it has on our community.
Yay!
right, congratulations to everyone that was recognized this evening. We're going to move on to our public comment. This is an opportunity for the community to share their thoughts with the board. The board listens to concerns on any topic for up to 1 hour. There's a 3-minute time limit per individual speaker. Our first speaker will be commenting virtually, so I'm assuming that is not happening yet. So we will do that when that person's ready. All other speakers, when you signed in this evening, you should have received a number indicating the order in which you will speak. So you can go ahead and come up to the podium once the person before you has completed their comments. The timer will begin after you introduce yourself, and it is big enough, I guess, for everyone to see. Why don't we then go to our first in-person person commenter? I'm not sure what to call it. So, never mind. Change of plans. Sorry. Just trying to keep you on your toes. Make sure you know what's going on here, because I clearly don't. All right. So we will have our first public commenter joining us virtually in a moment, and then we'll start with our folks that are here in person. Thank you. Okay. Oh, hi, Ms. Adams.
Can you see me?
We can, and we can hear you, so you may begin whenever you're ready.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
First, I want to thank you for allowing me to appear virtually. I am currently at Color Strand's Winter Gala, and it's, as you know, the last Christmas party for this school. So I really appreciate you allowing me literally to be in 2 places at once. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're fine.
Okay. My comments this evening, I would like to make on the decision that seems to be on the table tonight's agenda, which is to extend Superintendent Dorland's contract until 2029. I would like to comment and provide some of my own feedback. I won't speak for the community. What I will say about how I feel about this is that I think in life in general, the only topic we usually consider dating around with is picking a mate. And I think there are other really important key people in our lives, like our leaders, our bosses, our teachers, our therapists. A lot of people are in therapy with therapists that are like bad arranged marriages, and then they wonder why they aren't successful. And so sometimes you have to date around, and you have to find your mate. And there's not too many other places that we have that opportunity. A lot of us are stuck with our bosses. We're stuck with other people we're put with. I know that we in Jeffco is very similar to finding a mate in the sense that we have had to kind of date a few duds and find people that maybe aren't a fit for us. And what I strongly believe is that it's unclear whether or not Tracy Dorland is a fit for Jeffco yet, at least coming from the scorched earth of how the community feels right now, and me personally. I feel like there's a lot of work that needs to be done to help restore that public trust and that engagement so that we truly can live up to the Better Together standard of Jeffco. And it's something that's deeply personal and deeply important to me. And I believe with 1.5 years left in Superintendent Dorland's contract, that's a very good opportunity to hold community meetings and to communicate to us with even better optics and better body language that you care for us and that working together is something that's important to you, and not just using buzzwords like lessons learned, but actually showing us with your actions that you are here to listen to us and work together with us, that this isn't just your district and things happening to us, but things happening for us. And I want to use those lessons learned by having that be something that's proven and make sure that we are in fact finding the mate that we want to stay with. I know that it's on the agenda item for you all to discuss what the performance review is that you have had of hers, but that's not public information as of yet. And so we're not privy to that. And we don't know how she's being evaluated on your end. But on our end, and on my end, I feel disappointed by the body language. I feel disappointed by the resentful tone sometimes in the comments. And those are things that are pretty significant. And to reinstate a commander that's not just making unpopular decisions, but one that's not focusing on the morale of the troops is a bad decision for unit cohesion and moving forward. And so I really strongly caution us doing that without more public engagement and without hearing more input from the public on whether or not this is our mate and this is a good fit for us for another 6.5 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Enjoy your celebration. All right, when we turn now to our in-person people, welcome. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and your cohort here, that would be wonderful, and you can begin whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Amy Dillon. I'm from Golden, Colorado, and we're here to talk about health education policy.
My name is Marlene Alba, and I'm from Lakewood.
And I'm Emily Merriweather, and I'm from Evergreen. All right. I'd also just like to note that I'm a staff member with the Jefferson County Communities That Care Coalition. Jefferson County Communities That Care is a coalition comprised of more than 100 stakeholders, community members, key leaders, and youth. Jeffco Public Schools staff, community partners, and Jeffco youth have helped to guide these collaborative efforts to address the vision of a thriving, healthy, and safe community for our youth.
I'm also staff with CTC, but I actually began as an intern while I was in Lakewood High School. So with that in mind, at the core of Jeffco CTC is youth engagement. Through data collection and engagement with youth, we learned about their desire to learn more about social, emotional, mental, and physical health. To address this need across the county, coalition members supported an update to the district's health education policy, coded as IHAM. The community truly cares that youth gain the knowledge and skills for addressing their health and wellness so they can live a full, safe, and healthy life. This updated policy is a really significant step in this direction.
I'd like to make sure I thank Marlene and all the youth that participated in our work with the coalition because they are at the core of what we do. My name's Amy Dillon, and I am a volunteer and a contractor with Jefferson County Communities That Care with my small business, Advancing Dynamic Solutions. We work at the intersection of public health, education, and healthcare to improve outcomes for communities. I've been a part of a lot of coalition efforts, and Jefferson County Communities That Care is one of the strongest I've ever been a part of. So we really want to greatly appreciate the Board of Education and district leadership for passing the updated IHAM, or health education policy, this past April. This will really help to ensure that all students have access to standards-based health education, which is so important because that's what students have asked for and the youth are indicating. We're really excited to continue to collaborate with district staff to ensure this health education policy is fully implemented, and really are excited for the support from the Board of Education and district leadership to do so. We also want to make sure we're really connecting with community resources and partners, and that's why the district's participation with Jefferson County Communities That Care has been so beneficial. It really is an example of community and school district partnership. So again, we want to thank you for your support for these community-driven initiatives and supporting what youth are asking for across the district, and also helping to ensure these important policy changes are implemented that we indicated in the policy in April. I also want to give a shout out to Dave Kohler, Fran Taffer, and Jamie Grimm, who have been so involved with this work and have represented the district beautifully, along with a number of other district staff. So thank you for your support and hearing us today.
Thank you. All right. Whoever is next in line. Like, we'll listen to all of you. It's okay. Welcome.
Good evening, board. At least one of us in the audience can count. Thank you. My name is John DeStefano. I'm Executive Director of the Jefferson County Administrators Association. Our address is 581 Conference Place. And the topic we're here to talk about tonight is the extension of the superintendent's contract. Jeffco Public Schools needs consistency in our leadership. We have had so many challenges in superintendents over the last 10 years that it has been extremely challenging for all of us, our students, our employees, our leaders, our entire community. In fact, it has been destabilizing for our district. With each superintendent came new changes, new initiatives, new directions. We were unable to actually focus on pretty much anything. In fact, we did not get better. Then at the height of our instability, the school board hired Superintendent Dorland. It was and is still challenging. COVID and the other challenges didn't just disappear. The district needed leadership and direction, and we got it. We got it from our superintendent, and we got it from our school board, and we got it from you working together. And it made a tremendous difference. Superintendent Dorland has assembled a team we believe in, and a team who believes in us. And the school board and the superintendent have not shied away from the hard decisions. In fact, you have embraced them. Because of that, you have the district doing the right work and headed in the right direction. I find it rare when a superintendent and school board accomplish so much in such challenging times. Sometimes it is hard to see the forest for the trees. But if you could, you would understand how important our superintendent is to us and the difference it makes to the stability of our district and our community. I really hope that the board considers this when making the decision to extend Tracy's contract. She has worked extremely hard to unite us as a district, and we are on the right track. Please keep the momentum going, extend our superintendent's contract, and please continue with the brave and good work that you are all doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
All right. Okay. Hello, board. Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Schaefer. I am a father of two. We live in Golden up in Coal Creek Canyon. I'm also a professor at School of Mines. I was part of the team that got the Upward Bound grant with Alameda, so it was really nice to see some of the students here earlier. We're really looking forward to starting that program soon. I'm here to talk about the start times. First, I just want to say I'm really in favor of this overall. I'm really happy you're moving a lot of the high schools, middle schools later. This was part of your plan for the healthy and equitable start times for all students. But here tonight I'm going to talk about the inequities that have been produced as a result of this plan. So my daughter's in second grade at Coal Creek Canyon, K-8, and we have kindergarten through 8th grade, right? We're a K-8 school. And our school starts at 8:50 a.m. So over the last year or so, I've been following the announcements. I did surveys. I read the research about the benefits for later start times for middle and high school students. But right when we serve middle school, right, we're K-8, so we didn't think we'd be affected in our little canyon school. But then on November 29th, we got an email from our principal saying, your start time is actually getting moved earlier by 65 minutes. So from 8:50 to 7:45 a.m. And right after that, it said, here's all the benefits of later start times. So I actually emailed them, said, is that a typo? And they said no. I emailed all of you. I emailed superintendent, other administrators, and I only got a couple replies back. But what I heard was that it was the research supports later start times for middle school students, high school students, not elementary, and also bus and transportation issues. I also emailed Beth Elmgreen, our community superintendent, and she told me basically little kids, they can wake up earlier. And also, if you don't like this, here's a school finder, find a new school. So I went to the school finder. I did that. I went to the school finder, and I wanted to see, well, what's going on with the other middle schools that serve middle school students, and are they all getting moved earlier, right? But that'd be against the research that's cited in this. So what I found was really surprising, and I gave Kimberly a handout to pass to all of you that has what I found in the school finder. So what we have in Jeffco, there's 5 K-8 schools that serve middle school students, and there's also 17 just true middle schools that serve 6 through 8. And out of these 22 schools total, we're the only one, Coal Creek Canyon, we're the only school, the only one that had our start time moved earlier. Every other one, 21, either had 2 stay the same, 19 moved later. Some of them moved as late as an hour and 50 minutes later. Ours moved an hour and 5 minutes backwards. This makes it even worse for our community. We don't have any funding for after-school support. We now get out at 2:45 p.m. There's no after-school programs at Coal Creek Canyon. We're a mountain community. Our kids just can't wander home or anything. You know, they can't just hang out. It's a little bit different up there. So, you know, this is just, I got to ask you all again, and I did this in the email and I didn't get any replies to this question, so I'm going to ask you now. You know, why are we the only school that serves middle schools and middle school students in Jeffco? Why are we the only school that had our start time move earlier, which completely goes against the research? It says middle school and high school students have later start times, have the benefits. So why only our school out of all the other ones? So as I started out, I said I'm 100% in favor of the later start times. I'm really glad you're doing this. I know there's bus shortages. I know there's transportation issues. I get that. However, Jeffco argues that, and I'm quoting from the deputy superintendent in her YouTube video. She said that we're working on, I'm quoting now, we're working on healthy and equitable start times for all our students. So this argument of equity is false, though, as you're now creating inequities for our certain middle school students at the expense of others. If you're going to make this statement that you want equity, you actually have to make it happen.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that's here for public comment? Okay. Thanks to you all for participating. We are going to move forward with our next agenda item, which is our study session of the annual comprehensive financial report and external audit with our auditors. So if you want to join us, I'd like to welcome Brenda Copeland, Christy Moss, and Paul Niedermuller. Did I say that right? I always Muller. Okay. To present the annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022, and the concurrent independent financial audit. Before I turn it over to our presenters, Superintendent Dorland, do you have any comments?
I want to thank Mr. Niedermuller for the work that you've done in supporting this report, putting it together, and collaborating with our team. I really appreciate your services and your partnership. And I need to thank Ms. Moss and Ms. Copeland for the incredible amount of work that they have done to also put this document together. So with that, I'll hand it over, I'm handing it to Ms. Copeland prior to Mr. Niedermuller having his time with the board. Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Good to see you this evening. We appreciate this opportunity to present the comprehensive financial statements of the district, along with the detailed support information we provide in the document that we think helps our citizens really understand how we deploy resources in the district. We appreciate the rigor with which Clifton Larson Allen has reviewed these financial statements and accompanying notes. The auditor has issued an unmodified opinion, meaning that, and Paul will explain this further, meaning that in their opinion, the district's financial statements through June 30, 2022 present fairly in all material aspects the respective financial position and activities of the districts and its component units, funds, etc. The auditor has noted a material weakness and significant deficiency in the internal controls over our financial reporting. The auditor has also noted a material weakness in the internal controls over our major federal programs. We take these findings very seriously. We have already taken steps to correct these deficiencies and will work diligently and rapidly to improve in the future. We have included our corrective action plans in the annual report and are happy to further discuss those with you, Financial Oversight Committee, Audit Committee, etc. And with that, I'm pleased to turn over the mic to Paul.
Well, thank you, Ms. Copeland and members of the Board of Education. By way of introduction, Paul Niedermuller, a principal with Clifton Larson Allen, and had the opportunity to be the audit engagement lead for the Jefferson County Public Schools audit ending June 30, 2022. Just wanted to kind of get you where we got to the table today, we have also met with the audit committee. That meeting took place on Tuesday of this last week. We met with that committee includes a member of the FOC as well as 2 members of Board of Education. And we spent some time with the committee discussing the results of the audit as well as our opinion as we'll describe today. My intent is to go over this in brevity with the slide presentation. I'm going to refer to some of the pages within the report so you can go back, but my intent is not to kind of follow along with those pages, but more to provide a context in terms of what those pages represent and what our opinion is over. So on that note, kind of delineating responsibility. So we are engaged by the Board of Education to issue a report, a financial statement opinion over the information presented by management. And as Ms. Copeland alluded to, we issued an unmodified opinion in all material respects. Those pages of those opinions start on page 13 of the report and conclude on page 18. And again, a very positive result over the financial statements. The second component we talk about, as alluded to on the slide deck, is there's other information within this financial statements, and I'm going to kind of highlight what that is a little bit later, but there's some of that information that's not all audited. Because this is an annual comprehensive financial report, it is not intended to be all audited information. Some of it is other information for stakeholders, as Ms. Copeland alluded to, taxpayers of the entity. The third bullet point relates to our single audit. This is the federal award. We issued an opinion over the federal, your stewardship over those federal programs. By way of magnitude, the district received $83 million of federal funds during the year ended June 30, 22. And finally, we're required to communicate any matters that require the attention of governance, and we have done so in the back of our report, and we'll talk about the results that were commented on earlier in terms of material weakness and significant deficiency that warrant and merit the attention of governance based upon the work that was performed. This does not relieve management of their responsibility and your responsibility as governance over the financial stewardship of the district. Our report includes internal controls are tested, as evaluated as part of our work, but we do not opine on the effectiveness of those internal controls. And then finally, it is discussed in our opinion on page 13 to 16. An audit is not an absolute document. We do not test 100% of the transactions, but we do it on a test basis to attain reasonable but not absolute assurance that the audit is the financial statements are free of material misstatements. So the scope of the audit, as directed by the Board of Education, is this annual financial statements, which also include the single audit. And the single audit is those federal programs that I described earlier. In the current period, we were required to test 4 major programs. To put that into context, historically, the district has been required to do 1 to maybe 3. Because of the significance of the federal dollars from ARPA as well as coronavirus relief funds, the district was required to test additional programs, and 2 of those were deemed to be high risk by the Office of Management of Budget. And as you see on the slide screen, those 2 that have been deemed to be higher risk are the Emergency Connectivity Fund program as well as the Education Stabilization Fund, or COVID-19, or commonly referred to as ESSER. So those are the 4 programs that were subject to testing in the current year. The district also adopted or implemented Statement 87. Statement 87 is a accounting standards that incorporates leases for a right-to-use asset. A lot of times in the past, accounting standards only required those that were considered to be capital in nature, where either they transferred title or they qualified as a capital lease. Now this standard also has anything that you have the right to use an asset and has to account for that right to use the asset in terms of the value of the asset that you're acquiring or the right to use, as well as the future payments related to that right to use asset as a lease liability. So that was implemented for the year ended June 30, 22. So I've caught the board up in terms of some of the things that went through the audit process, some of the scope of the audit engagement. Now I'd like to go through the results and the financial statement opinions. So from a page number standpoint, I talked about the pages 13 to 16 is where the independent auditors report on. The statement of net position is highlighted on page 17. This is a full accrual basis. This is something that happens once a year where you show all of your assets that you own versus any of the liabilities that you owe and comes up to a component of net position. Just by way of background, this incorporates all of your capital assets, your school buildings, as well as your pension and your general obligation debt, and shows the business, more of a business type activity. So the statement of activities is the income statement surrounding the change in that accrual-based statement of net position. And then finally, the final item of the basic financial statements of which we give an opinion on is those fund financial statements. These are more familiar to you as the general fund, the grants fund, et cetera. And we issue an opinion over each of those major funds as outlined within the report. Now, if you think there's about 13 pages of financial statements, there's 50 pages describing how that information is compiled. The accounting policies are related to the district, more information, detailed information about the makeup of all those components of your cash and investments, your capital assets, your debt. You can find that information further within the notes of the financial statements. Going down the line of required supplementary information, again, this is an item that is highlighted within our audit report as unaudited information, but this includes some of the pension and OPEB information as well as some of the budgetary compliance schedules and supplementary schedules of those non-major funds, so smaller funds that are incorporated or consolidated within the fund financial statements. So a lot of information with an annual comprehensive financial report, but we just want to give you a little bit of landscape in terms of what our opinion is, and it's basically that from the statement of net position all the way through the footnotes of the financial statements presented. And then finally, we conclude with the single audit section, which again is those 4 major programs that we described that were tested. And as we described to the audit committee, those programs are promulgated and tested, and they have to be tested based on the requirements of the federal government. So this is not something that we say, hey, we want to test this program. We're required to test those programs on a rotational basis, or if they've been deemed to be higher risk, as I alluded to earlier, of those 2 programs. At the conclusion of our report and after the single audit, and just by a way of background, in the past 2 years, the single audit has been a separate deliverable. And the reason for that is the Office of Management and Budget, or the compliance supplement, was late in issuance and was not available to audit to be able to comply with the statutory deadline of 11/30 or 12/31 to Colorado Department of Education. In the current year, this information has been consolidated and reported as one document as you have in front of you tonight. Briefly describing the findings which are outlined within your financial statements. Starting on page 157, we've identified an item of material weakness and significant deficiencies over the financial statement audit. And just from a definition standpoint, I would like to read what a material weakness is described as under the audit standards, just by way of understanding the context of that language. So a material weakness is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting, such that there is a reasonable possibility that a material weakness of the entity's financial statements will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. A reasonable possibility exists when the likelihood of an event occurring is either reasonably possible or probable, as defined as follows. And again, it defines reasonably possible as the chance of a future event or events occurring is more than remote but less than likely, and probable is the future event or events are likely to occur. In both of these situations, those events did occur, and we highlight the first item is related to some of the grant activity. This has to do with the Emergency Connectivity Fund. It was recorded as grant activity, but was deemed ineligible and moved to the general fund as a result, and you'll see the findings and the dollar amounts described under bullet 1. The second item is quantified as a significant deficiency. And again, from a definition standpoint, a significant deficiency is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control or financial reporting that is less severe than a material weakness, yet important enough to merit attention by those charged with governance. So we felt it was important to describe This one is charged with governance. And again, this is a schedule on the debt related to the charter schools. And this is related to the statement of net position or the full accrual basis of accounting. The schedule supporting the debt from the previous year was not updated to reflect a payment of $275,000 from the previous year. The final item that we would like to discuss with the board tonight is a material weakness over the single audit. Again, this program of the four that we tested, this relates to the emergency connectivity program. And you'll see there was question cost of items that were submitted to the federal government. And keep in mind, this was a direct award program. And what I mean by a direct award, this is an award that was directly from the federal government. The other three programs that we tested were all pass-through dollars from the Colorado Department of Education. So this was these costs associated in the dollar amounts on the screen were deemed to be ineligible costs related to cases for computers that were purchased under this program, and we quantified those dollars amounts and highlighted an internal control deficiency that warranted a material weakness over the single audit program. All of this information is within your financial statements in more detail as required by the audit standards, and they start on page 158 and conclude on page 160. You will also see that the district has prepared a corrective action plan in order to not have these repeat in subsequent years, and that starts on page 162 and continues to 163. At this time, I'd be happy to pause for any questions or comments from the Board of Education as your independent auditor.
Great, thank you very much. Board members, questions and comments? Director Barta.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you. Just comment on how we've already been briefed on this a few times, because I know that the presentation can seem very brief without a lot of detail. But after we received our reports on November 30th, each of us have had an opportunity to meet with the district staff in our key initiatives meeting to go through these issues and really understand them. And then I'm part of the audit committee with Director Miller, and that was an opportunity for us to ask a lot of really in-depth questions. So I'm kind of bringing this up so that anyone listening or of concern would know that we've really spent a lot of time thinking about this and learning about this. One of the things we asked a lot of questions about in the audit committee is the corrective action, and really more understanding of the timeline of that and the recommended actions. And I think we felt that it was sufficiently answered in ways that made us feel comfortable with the way the district has proposed to move forward on it. And we had some other questions about some of the details of the ways that this happened and how we can support the district in terms of, and the financial services office, what is this called? To figure out how we can think about the infrastructures in place, our software and systems that might need improving, and then the types of personnel that we need to make sure that we can put in place to avoid these kinds of things in the future. So I felt very confident at the end of that about where we are in the work that the district has done to remedy these and address them.
Thank you. Other board members? Director Miller.
Again, thank you for all of the hard work and the time that you took to talk with the audit committee on Tuesday. Just so people understand, at the very beginning of your presentation, there's the section on the lease contracts that you cited. And can you just go a little bit so that people understand which ones you're talking about? I think it was the, yes, please. So that people know exactly what that one is in particular that we're addressing.
Sure thing. Thank you for the question, Director Miller. The only lease that was identified by the district and is subject to the audit as described here was the lease of the Myers Pool. And that information is disclosed within the footnotes. Because there was no construction that happened as of June 30, 22, or a commitment or a construction commitment. The only thing that is highlighted on the financial statements is the cash from the proceeds of that liability, as well as the liability itself.
Okay, just so people understand, that's what that component is, or that piece is, and it's not a plethora of leases. It's specifically the Myers pool. So I wanted to make sure people understood exactly what that was in terms of reference. And I guess the other question when we talked about in the audit committee was just how the district has grown over time, and the need to really put a solid foundation in place for our financial team so that we realize we've grown from a half a billion dollar organization to close to $2 billion when you consider our capital program as well as grants, as well as then our general funds. And so we realized, I think, when we were talking at the audit committee, just how important it is that you and your team, Ms. Copeland, have the resources and the manpower and brain power to do the work as we evolve and grow and have greater challenges, financial issues. So I really appreciate that conversation that we had on Tuesday as well. And I think everybody is committed to that work and making sure that you have that staff that you need. So thank you to you and your staff that are currently in place, and we look forward to becoming even more robust.
Other questions or comments? Okay. I just have one clarifying question. When you talk about different funds that are deemed high risk, those are deemed high risk by the federal government or because of our it's not our organization, it's the fund itself. Can you just talk a little bit about it?
Sure thing. So your specific question is the federal government each year comes out with programs that they would like to see tested, and they deem those as higher risk. And two of those programs are emergency connectivity and ESSER. And that was the reason for those being tested in the current period.
Thanks. Other questions or comments for our guests and friends? Okay, Superintendent Dorland, anything else you'd like to add? Great. Thank you so much for your work. Thank you for engaging with our committees and for being here.
Thank you.
All right, board, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on our CIP projects aligned to phase 1 of regional opportunities for thriving schools. The purpose of this presentation is to respond to some questions related to CIP funding recommendations that were outlined in the December 7th, 2022 board study session presentation, and to clarify information presented as well as the intentional steps taken to respect the process and timeline the district was working within during and prior to the public recommendation made to the board on November 10th, 2022, and to recommend some next steps. Superintendent Dorland, is there anything you would like to say, or you're starting us off?
I'm starting you off and finishing this as well.
Well,
so
then,
you guys
welcome.
get me as a presenter on this topic tonight. It's partly in the interest of time and just making sure that we're as efficient as possible. And so that I can answer some questions that you all discussed in your study session last week and have since some of you also have talked with me about this topic. So the purpose of this presentation is to really respond to the questions related to the CIP funding recommendation that we outlined in your December 7th study session, and to clarify some information presented, as well as what intentional steps to respect the process and the timeline the district was working within, which I think President Schooley, you mentioned in your comments. I also want to give the board time to discuss, reflect, and here's some next steps that I'm going to recommend, and then give us some feedback about those next steps. I want to summarize real quick while we're on this slide that based on your study session conversation and feedback from board members since then in the last week, I believe the board has interest in taking time to further study and understand the scope of these investments and aligning them to the need for these investments to certain data. For example, enrollment data out of Jeffco, Enroll Jeffco. Number 2, I believe that the board has interest in understanding the impact of these investments on the overall CIP. some feedback that I've received is that we tend to talk about the CIP investments narrowly instead of thinking about an issue and then explaining to you and our public how it impacts the whole. So that's second. And third, I think the board has interest in reviewing the CIP and the scope of the CIP, including the premium, in the context of our declining enrollment and what that declining enrollment is doing to our use of facilities. So those are just high level, some of the patterns and trends, thank you, Dr. Kim, that I've heard over the last week and took away from your study session conversation last week. So next I want to talk to you about the timeline that we went through and just reiterate for all of you and for our public some of what we've summarized for you in regard to how we got from the beginning of this process where you asked for a recommendation, a more comprehensive recommendation around school consolidation, and then your decision and last week when we reviewed these possible proposed investments. So on June 8th, you received an update on ROFs as well as a presentation on capital investments for thriving schools. We talked at the time about $12 million in funding from unallocated CIP funds, which is premium and contingency within the bond. And that you basically gave us general direction that about $12 million of those premium funds can and should be considered for investment related to review regional opportunities. At the time, we did not know which schools were going to be recommended for closure, and we didn't know how many. So we made some assumptions around maybe 8 to 10, but no closing or identified schools had been, no closing or receiving schools had been identified. And we had not made attempts to estimate the potential savings in the CIP if planned projects were suspended or eliminated at the closing schools, because we didn't know which closing schools were. We had at the time, and even prior to this date, last fall, paused construction other than safety improvements in some of our extremely small schools, just to make sure that we weren't investing in schools that were possibly going to be closed, given that we knew the Fitzmaurice issue was coming and that you were likely going to be interested in a more comprehensive plan. So then we went through the summer, and between the 30th and the 24th, we published the FCDB dashboard based on the revised policy. We, in the presentation on July 26th, included a process for developing a recommendation, which included one receiving school when possible. There was a value, I would say, that we discussed, that you all discussed as a board around students not being spread out so that they couldn't matriculate to a new school with their peers, but an interest in making sure they could go with friends and families could go together. We avoided at this time over the summer physical building walks to assess our facility needs as a potential receiving school prior to the 25th because we were finalizing the list and we didn't want to fuel conjecture about inclusion of schools in the consolidation recommendations when we hadn't made final decisions yet about what was going to be part of the recommendation. On the 25th, we did present and lay out the amount of CIP money that had already been expended on schools recommended for closure, because this was the date when we announced the recommendation and the names of the schools. We believed at the time that there was about $12.2 million in projects that had been intentionally paused in schools with low enrollment pending consolidation decisions. So this is the pause that we have last fall. And we mentioned in the August 25th presentation that capital savings and costs that are not included and will be separately estimated as decisions are made. It did contemplate that there would be potential costs due to new capital projects for consolidations. And we highlighted individual school slides that there were some major building additions that would be contemplated as part of the recommendation, which was the Bergens, the Stober addition, and the Prospect Valley addition, and that was a possibility. On August 25th, we did lay out the amount of CIP funding expended on schools recommended for closure and approximately $12.2 million in projects that had been intentionally paused in schools with low enrollment pending consolidation decisions. The similarity of these figures may have caused some confusion, and they have since changed because we have more clarity on what the investments were, what was paused initially, how many of those paused schools were now part of the recommendation, And in addition to those schools, how many more schools were part of the recommendation, which made the dollars shifting because we were estimating it first, and then we had some clarity based on the number of schools and the specific schools that were recommended. I also believe that there were potentially divergent assumptions among the staff and the board regarding whether the $12 million set aside from the premium and the unallocated CIP funding would be offset or added to the cost avoidance related to ROFs. And so I just want to be honest and transparent about that, and want to make sure that our assumption was that we may needed to not only use the premium $12 million that you had set aside, but possibly some of the savings as well from the schools that weren't going to be invested in because they were closing, as we worked to make sure those dollars followed the students to the receiving schools. And so that was part of the cost assumptions that you saw last week in your study session. And so given where we are, and given the feedback that I highlighted at the beginning, in terms of what I'm hearing as what I believe is sort of a board majority interest around taking time to study and really understanding what investments are necessary given enrollment trends. Understanding the impact of these investments on the greater capital improvement program, and reviewing the CIP within the context of our changing demographics and shifting enrollment. These are my recommendations. I think that we should continue to move forward, and I strongly encourage the board to continue to move forward with construction related to the center program movements and our pre-K classrooms, so that we can continue to provide not only the same number of pre-K seats, but more, and expand given the UPK work that the state is partnering with us on, and make sure that our center program students are moving into facilities that are well equipped and have facilities that meet their needs. I think you should consider and discuss tonight, prior to your consent agenda, the pros and cons of pausing the additions at Stober and Prospect Valley to reevaluate round one enrolled Jeffco numbers, which will be available in late January. I think you should also consider a special study session in late January or early February to contemplate the future use of CIP funding in the context of declining enrollment and shifting capital sources and uses. Two things related to this. We've put together these proposed and possible investments in receiving schools for you to, and none of the contracts are coming your way except for Prospect Valley tonight, quite yet, but they will be coming as we turn the corner into 2023. So I think a special study session to better understand those investments and why we believe they might be needed, and for you to give us clear direction on, yes, this makes sense, go forward and bring us the contract, or we like this one, but could you sharpen the pencil? Does it really need to be this amount? Or this one doesn't make sense at this point, given what we're seeing in the enrollment numbers. So that's one thing that I recommend we do as part of this retreat, or what am I calling it? A special study session. The second piece is you are going to, in January, hear from our team our proposal around the process for property dispensation. And I think it is important for the board to consider what type of additional revenue the district may be receiving, given some of the decisions that will be made in the next 12, 24, 36 months around some of our properties that we own. And so, and then the other piece that I think is really wise in terms of the feedback I'm receiving from you over the last week is to think, study the CIP in relation to our shifting enrollment. Some of you have said to me, we know that we need to have this phase 2 conversation around K-8s and middle schools. What if there are facility needs related to those decisions? Will we make sure that we have funds for that? Will that get in the way of other priorities we have, like Fletcher Miller, that the board has discussed in June of last year as well? And so I think it's wise for you to ask for us to slow down a little and for you to better understand the impact of the decisions you might make on certain contracts to the overall whole of the CIP and the impacts of our declining enrollment on the facility investment needs that we have for our district. You'll notice there are other things on your consent agenda tonight that I'm not recommending you discuss pros and cons around, including, for example, Wheat Ridge High School. It's about dang time that Wheat Ridge High School gets an investment, and it was part of the original bond, and it's necessary. So please, I'm saying this for you all, but I'm also saying this for our public. I am not recommending that we shift some of the original scope in the CIP because we have promised our communities certain things. But I am recommending that you pause for a minute and think, what does the closure of 16 elementary schools and possibly some additional closures as we go into phase 2 mean in terms of the opportunity we have to invest our capital funds in our facilities for the kids, in the facilities where they will be served. So here are potential topics for the study session. I think looking at larger phase 1 ROF-related projects, the additions, and really giving you all a better sense of detail around what those additions mean, what they look like, and why we need them. Phase 2 of the consolidation process and funding that might be needed in that phase for secondary schools and where that funding is going to come from. How much might you want to begin to prioritize for that? The project schedule and costs for the remainder of the CIP, including reevaluating the need for various projects given our declining enrollment, prioritization of premium and unallocated funding, following up from your initial conversation about this in June of 2022, and in the context of declining enrollment and the shifts in our use of facilities. And what capital may be added to our resources by surplusing closed buildings, and how sale and lease of proceeds might, more than likely, offset the current investments that are in front of you. This is big work. It's complicated work, and I think the board should take some time to do this work as you're also keeping on track some of the investments that we know we need to make in order to support kids in 23-24 in their new schools. So with that, you have an appendix also here, which is the materials from last week. So we can reference that if you'd like. I will kick it off and just say to you that if you want to remove the Prospect Valley investments from your consent agenda, there are 2 contracts. One is an architect contract and one is a contractor contract. We are planning to do this as a CMGC, which basically means that the contractor and the architect work side by side to plan and cost estimate out the work. So those 2 contracts are ready for your approval. But if you don't feel ready to make that decision this evening, you can pause that, pull it from your consent agenda, and we will bring you back more information in January or February, like enrollment data, to talk about the need for that investment. If you delay, the con or the risk is that we may not have the addition open by August, and it might just go into the fall a little bit in terms of opening the addition. And we would have to work with Principal Schrant and others to monitor enrollment and where kiddos will be served, in the building. But it would allow you to look at the enrollment data and make a decision about the investment aligned to what looks like the enrollment will be next year. That's the only one that's facing you tonight. And I just want to make sure you all feel confident in your decision and that you have all the information you feel like you need to have to be effective decision makers, given that this is a decision in front of you this evening. Other than that, I would like for you to talk about that. And I'd also think it's good for you to talk about the idea of this study session and some of the recommendations that I'm making to you this evening, given the feedback that you've provided to me and our team from your study session last week.
Thank you, Superintendent. All right, Board, is our opportunity to have some conversation now. What comments and questions do we have, and is there anyone that would like to begin? Director Parker.
As far as the enrollment for Prospect Valley, I'm familiar with school principals kind of having their number. They know what their school can hold, and they will cut off accepting enrollment when they hit a certain mark. So what would Prospect Valley use as their cutoff number, their current capacity, or would they also add to the current capacity anybody from the closing school? I mean, yeah.
So we have Ms. Copeland and her team right now are working closely with our planning team to create enrollment projections for our elementary schools. We have not in the past used enrollment projections for budgeting purposes. We have used last year's October count, which has been challenging because then each year we decline in enrollment. And and we can't use last year's October count because we'll have 16 fewer schools. So we are stepping into the waters of enrollment projections this year, which is best practice and something I'm really happy we're doing. It's also going to be a year of uncertainty because we're using what we know about the Allendale and Fitzmaurice choice patterns and enrollment patterns to sort of guide some of that projection work. And so, Ms. Copeland, I don't know what you have. If you can talk a little bit about your projections for Prospect Valley in particular and what's driving that. And then I know Mr. Reed is in the audience, and he may be able to talk a little bit about the capacity in the current new building versus the capacity with the addition.
And I'm also opening spreadsheets while I'm talking. So when we went through the process to generate the potential enrollment projections, we did two things. First, we looked at what trend is the school already on, meaning what might happen before we take into consideration ROFs. So that means if they're on a trend to grow, we would grow them into next year. If they're on a trend to decline, we would decline them into next year incrementally by some percentage that is a compound annual growth rate over the past. Then we looked at each and every closing school and mapped out sort of where we thought the top 10 receiving schools would be. We did not estimate the full gamut. And what we know from Fitzmaurice is that kids ended up going to about 21 different schools from Fitzmaurice, and that's quite a bit of diversity in receiving schools. But a lot of those receiving schools got one kid, and that's not pragmatic from a forecasting perspective. So for Prospect Valley, after we ran through that process and we said, where might kids come from and what are the right percentages for the designated closing school to potentially matriculate into the receiving school, we estimated that they would be adding 121 students via effectively ROF's closing schools. And of course, I believe there's also 19 students projected via, the center program that will be located there. And for center programs, just so you know, we did not estimate any, they're not going anywhere else. I guess is the easiest way to say it. So the whole group projected to Prospect Valley, that would put them, scrolling, at approximately 568 students. And I'm trying, I think your next question would probably be, what is their current capacity? And I'm trying to look that up.
Yeah. Mr. Reed, do you have the information about the new building, its capacity? And some of this is, I'll just be frank, you can get a principal in a room and talk about capacity, and they have very different opinions and perspectives about building use than our facilities team. Just because our facilities team is looking at it from a numbers and data perspective, and our principals live in that building and know about different needs and uses for various spaces as compared to our facilities team. So again, this is part of what we have been working through with the leadership in these buildings, but I'll let Mr. Reed answer from a facilities perspective.
So the original building was designed as one of our 576 student capacity buildings. The addition adds 8 classrooms, 2 of which are designated as AN classrooms, so they're special ed classrooms, and then you have 6 general classrooms in addition to that. So that would put us to about the 650 number for the school.
So I'm going to summarize. We're projecting 576, and we believe with the addition, we would be at 650 with 2 specialized for capacity, with 2 specialized classrooms for our AN center programs. One of the other things that we can do, and it can go both ways, is manage choice enrollment into a school and make sure that we manage to the enrollment we need to have in that building, given its capacity. That being said, we are a declining enrollment district, and anytime we can get families where they want to be, we want to do that, even if they are choicing. And as we know, 46% of our families choice, and this is also a school that's near Denver. We may have some kids there who are choicing from a different district. And so it's sort of that catch-22 where you can manage to it, but as a declining enrollment district and as a district that really wants to serve our families where they want to be served, that can become kind of at odds at times as well. And so.
I just have a follow-up. I'm looking at the dashboard right now, the FCB, for Prospect Valley. So these are the old numbers of the old before the new construction finished, because it says capacity is 480. So at what point would we update this dashboard?
The dashboard's being updated in January, along with the additional publication of middle school, high school, and K-8 schools.
I'm so sorry, I didn't write it down. So what was the number Brenna gave and what was the number that Tim gave? 5. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And just one other note about Prospect Valley, which again, my team, as we were trying to work through the numbers, worked through. So the 480, I think you're looking at on that page, does not include the temporary classrooms. Is that right, Tim?
That's correct.
So there are temporary classrooms that are currently housing students already, if that makes sense. The number I gave, my projection is 568 inclusive of the 19 students in the center program that will be coming to Prospect Valley. And I believe, I don't want to speak for you, Tim, I believe Tim said 650 would be the new capacity.
But I think Danielle's point is, as it currently stands right now under the current design, we have 576 seats, including the space for the 19 kiddos that would, there's 568 children that could go to Prospect Valley, including the 19 children in the center school. So you'd be looking at a 98% utilization level. Taking 568 kids and dividing that by 576 gives you 98% utilization, correct?
I don't know what that 576 number is.
I thought he said this is what the current capacity is.
That was what the building is designed for.
At this present time without the addition.
Correct.
If we go to the new addition, to the 650, we'd have 568 and divide that by the 650, and your utilization level drops then down to 87%.
Yes, and again, we have principals who will make sure that that space is utilized.
I understand.
Given how, and it does change, given how grade level students in certain grade levels fall, you might need an additional classroom here. You may, and again, going back to this thriving student experience at the elementary level, in a school with 568 students, you're most likely going to be able to afford intervention teachers and additional supports that could possibly use space. So I just want to be respectful of the fact that the practitioners in our building often feel like they need more space than 98% capacity. Do you understand what I'm saying? To be flexible enough with the programming and the space that they want to, put in place for the kids. That's all.
And I understand that, and I understand we'd love to have more spaces for lots of different purposes, and I've seen all sorts of different uses of spaces. I'm just thinking of when we're contemplating the expenses for the expansion of Prospect Valley, expanses of Stober, truly understanding what Jeffco enroll is going to look like come January, how many of those kiddos check the box to go. And I would also say I do appreciate that we have people from Denver who want to go to Prospect Valley. I also believe that our Jeffco kids come first. And so being able to kind of balance that with how the priorities work. I understand people are already in that building, and so certainly they should stay, no doubt. But just thinking how the Enroll Jeffco can work for our kids would be helpful. And then also thinking we have other schools in that area that have space, and how do we ensure that those spaces are used as well, right? Because we know not everybody from Vivian is going to go to XYZ school. Not everybody from Wilmore Davis is going to XYZ school. So I think we need to be thoughtful
going back to Ms. Copeland's point about how we saw Fitzmaurice navigating, what does that actually look like for our children and families?
I mean, I think the fact that we're having this conversation right now is indicative of, the board's request for additional information and data in order to be effective decision makers. It looks like Ms. Copeland wants to jump in with some other context for you that I think could be important.
Just one more piece of data as you're thinking through things. The assumptions we're using project about 48% of students from Color Strand to go to Prospect Valley. And I want to be clear, that's an estimate. It could be more, it could be less. And I think when we think about what's the promise that we're making to students who live in a boundary, it could very well be that more students want to go. So I just wanted to make sure you knew what the baseline estimate was for how many students from Color Strand would be matriculating into Prospect Valley, and it's 48%. Thank you.
I would also just like to, just as a point of reference, the historical trends and patterns we saw, for example, with Fitzmaurice and Allendale were also based on emergency closure patterns. That is different. I think if you talk to the principals at receiving schools right now that are hosting events for families that may be interested in some of the intentionality around these partnerships to merge communities and be able to maintain some of that connection with families and students, I do think will demonstrate a different level than one child at a that will be different. I also just, as we move through these conversations, one of the commitments that we've made as a board around providing exceptional student experiences and the sort of why behind how we're going to create those in these new merged communities, understanding that the decision and criteria around the vote we took on November 10th was not based in facilities, it's based in enrollment primarily. I mean, in facility usage, not the facility itself. We also have now principals that are making commitments to children and families based on information we have given them. And so I want to be really careful that these conversations, while I know it's critically important we're making sound decisions and being good stewards of this money, we're also putting our principals in a really tricky spot with some of these things that we have committed already and put out in public already as being what the district intends to do, and pulling back on those commitments. I understand the need to be wise about that. But I will tell you that it makes me really uncomfortable because we are leaving this in the laps of our principals to look parents in the eye that they've already said, oh, look, it was presented on this date and on this date and on this date, that there's an addition, that there's going to be this, that there's going to be this for your child to create these new opportunities, and maybe not. And I am a little bit frustrated by the position that puts our principals in right now. So when we have these, let's pause and consider, I think that's wise to do. And I also just want to recognize out loud that we make decisions that we don't have to live with necessarily in terms of who we have to speak to the next morning and explain why the plan is changing or being questioned or may not happen anymore. And I don't feel good about that.
You said there is a risk that if we paused and waited on Prospect Valley, it might not be done by August. And I think like waiting until, what was the date, January 28th or so?
End of January is when enrolled Jeffco closed.
January. I mean, we have so much information that day and up to that point. So what is the current plan for when Prospect Valley would be done? The addition, because you're saying if we postpone, it may not be done in time for the fall year. I'm wondering, are we sure it's going to be done by the fall?
Yeah, I think Mr. Reed can answer that question.
Yes, we have the commitment from the contractor and the architect that the project will be done by the time school starts in August. And The contractor is Gerald Phipps, who we have a great deal of confidence in, and they've always delivered for us in the past, and believe that they will again here. We are making progress on this project.
Yep, Director Parker?
Yeah, so following up on my original question too, let's just use numbers like pretend the current school, Prospect Valley, holds 400. And when the completion of the building, the new building, makes it 500, and then the addition we're talking about made it 600. I'm just trying to say there's three different numbers that we have, like starting from the dashboard and into if we add 8 classrooms. The principal who's accepting enrollment requests, what number is the principal going to be using for cutting off or saying, I'm sorry, we're full? Or will they just keep accepting and then possibly get to the position you were talking about? A principal may have to say, I'm sorry, because we didn't get the addition, we're not going to be able to get you in.
Well, I know that we are working with our enrollment specialists and the families of closing schools to make sure they get where they want to go. And then, I think that our principals do manage to the capacity of their building. And so, well, it depends on if we do the addition or not, right? The other thing that is important to note is the opportunity in the addition to build specifically for our AN students classrooms that meet their needs is a really special opportunity. And it's something that we contemplated. I don't know if Mr. Polero wants to add anything, but when we contemplated what is best for the AN students that would be at Prospect Valley, this was something that we were excited about, I know, and that we believed would be in the best interest of some of our most needy students. So it's something that the board should also be aware of. And Mr. Polero, I'm going to hand it to you to maybe just add what you think is important for the board to know.
Sure. When we had our, I'll just bring up the candid conversation I had with one of our Fitzmaurice families. One of the things that they elevated that would be important to them, that was important to them when we transferred that program, was replicating the experience that our students are having at their current school at their new school. And for this transition, having 2 separate classrooms, one for the primary and one for the intermediate, is an example of how we would replicate that experience, because we know that's the experience for our students in our AIM programs that allow them to thrive. When you take a multi-grade level classroom or program, K-5, and you put it into one program or one classroom, that is not a thriving experience. Allowing the program to continue having 2 separate classrooms allows us to break it up into a K2, 3-5 separation, where students can be with their peers that are more developmentally appropriate in age, and allow our teachers to utilize the space differently than they would if it was just one classroom. So again, we also promised our community that when we would move these programs from the closing school to the receiving school, that we would replicate that experience to the extent that's practical. This is one way we can do that.
So just to be clear then, the new addition with the 8 classrooms includes the AN classrooms, and there's no way to separate that, is there? I mean, we can't say, okay, we'll just take the AN classrooms. We'll have a contract that's for everything or nothing. Is that what we're discussing?
Well, Mr. Reed, I don't know if this is similar to the Bergens, where we're building a shell and building out a portion of it, but we could maybe sharpen the pencil and do something like, I'm going to let Mr. Reed take it from here because he's going to be able to explain this better than me. I understand the concept, but we'll let the expert kind of explain.
That is certainly one of the options, would be to go ahead and do the shell work, as opposed to, and basically what you're doing is you're doing the exterior envelope, but you're not really doing any of the interior construction. And before I came over here, I just looked at what kind of savings that would be, and that's about a $2 million savings off the total work. But the AN classrooms are included in the addition; they are not in the building itself. So just keep that in mind.
Would a course of action like that end up potentially costing more in the long run because of efficiencies and.
Right. Okay. And just, we're still seeing a lot of inflation and things like that in the construction industry. So I can guarantee you that the interior construction, if we decide to defer it until, the fall and then reopen it or open it, say, next January, is going to cost more than it's going to cost today or what has been priced for today.
Ms. Parker, did that answer your questions? Do you have follow-up?
Thank you. That does answer the question about the contract, but I'm still trying to get back to this principal who's accepting enrollment requests. Is he going to be using the number that we could have with the 8 additional, or are they going to be using the number that they would have without any addition?
That depends on the board's decision to approve this contract or not. And so that's why I'm proposing that you have this discussion tonight, you make a decision, do you want to go ahead and approve these contracts tonight or come back by the end of January, beginning of February, so we can give the school some guidance on how much space they're going to have over time. If we wait too long and we can't open this edition in the fall, which it sounds like maybe at the end of January we could still, part of the benefit here too is that the contractors are on the site finishing up the current building. And so to be efficient and cost effective, putting the addition in while you've got people there, whether it's a shell and 2 sped classrooms or the full, addition, is beneficial. And it's not only more cost effective, it's also more time efficient. So that's something to consider. And it is really dependent upon how much space Principal Schrant will have in terms of his acceptance of students off of any sort of choice list.
Director Reed?
Okay, so I want to clarify because I don't feel like you're getting the answer. So just let me check my understanding. It sounds to me like one of the things that we're considering doing is basically saying to the principal, your cap is 650. But if after Enroll Jeffco closes, you're more like 568 or 570, then we might conceivably, if we decide we're going to wait and not decide to do this tonight, then we would wait until Enroll Jeffco closes and we would see what they have. If what they have justifies going ahead and building the addition, then we would do that. So his cap is that highest cap, but you wait and see how close he gets to it. And then I also want to clarify, but if we don't approve this tonight, if we say let's wait, then are we leaving a center program without what it needs? We're moving a center program there without the classrooms that it needs? Do I understand that right?
I think that's a great question, Director Reed. So we'll let Mr. Polero jump in. Is that the case? Or will he manage choice so that he has space for the program?
We would have to manage choice so that we have space for the program, and we'd have to come back to do some serious problem solving in terms of how we would accommodate our AN programs, given the number of students and the classroom needs that we've identified.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that in part this was a piece of why on slides, and I can't remember the dates for them, but why it was listed as an addition to the new build to be able to accommodate the center program moving. And then obviously there's 4 additional classrooms that are built in, 6 additional classrooms that are built in for other regular classroom space, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so then I have another question. So one of the other things that we've sort of thrown out here is the idea of building out a shell and just putting in the classrooms for that special ed. My concern about that is, does that end up being penny wise and pound foolish? Do we end up like all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we do need to, like a year from now, we do need to finish that out. And now we've made it instead of an $8 million project, we've made it a $12 million project because we decided not to do it all at once. I think that was similar to Stephanie's question, which is if we do a shell and then we come back and finish it out in a year or two, will it cost us more? And Mr. Reed, I think the answer was yes, which makes sense just given that you have to remobilize all of the construction and, and the finishing. I do wonder, and I'm going to look to my team over here. I have an idea, given some of the pros and cons that have been discussed. If the board were to approve, and this might be something that Ms. Tolleson will chime in on, or Mr. Bell, or Mr. Reed, if the board were to approve the contracts tonight, it would give us authority to move forward with a CMGC process, which again, just for our board and our public, means that the architect and the contractor are working together to design and cost estimate out everything at the same time. So what we bring to you in terms of cost estimates is closer to real than just, a higher level estimate. We could then work with the architect and the contractor to bring back by the end of January 3 things to you, or beginning of February. One would be enrolled Jeffco data. So you'd know how many kids are wanting to go there. And are they inbound rate? Are they choice? And we could even have Mr. Schrant here to talk about his processes, because I think that would be helpful for you just given the questions you've asked. So we could bring back enrolled Jeffco data. We could bring back an option with a full build out of the addition. And because right now the GMP on that is $6.5 million, which is GMP stands for guaranteed maximum price. So when you're in a CMGC process, the contractor gives you a guaranteed maximum price, which has their contingency built in, and it's guaranteed not to go over the $6.5 million. Don't quote me on that number. It might be less or more. Okay. So we have a decent GMP. We estimated $8 million. It's coming in below our estimate. That's good news. We could come back to you and say, look, if we build it out at 6.5, and here's the enrolled Jeffco data that supports that decision. Or we could come back to you and say, here's the enrolled Jeffco data. Here's the cost to build out just the 2 AN center programs, which honors the investment in our special education students, but also might save, as Mr. Reed indicated, possibly $2 million, because the GMP is up to 6.5. But if we end up working with the contractor and it ends up being 4.5 to them, I think that's possible, given my understanding and experience in this space. So Mr. Reed, does that make sense to you? Is that an option for the board to consider?
I think it's certainly an option to consider. Again, my 2.4 million was just a kind of an educated guess here, but I've seen what the individual costs are associated to exterior construction, the interior construction, and things like that. So it's fairly confident in that. But again, that is something that we can simply change order out. If we're going to reduce scope, we just issue a deductive change order, and that money doesn't get spent. Otherwise, and actually it's 6.8, I think, is the final GMP that we've received. That's the whole enchilada. That's the project cost, everything built out per the way it's designed. So, but yes, we have different ways to go with this, and the time to do it, actually.
Okay. When you say time to do that, do you mean that if the decision is deferred until end of January, early February, that would still be guaranteed for the fall opening of school?
What I meant by the time to do it would be that if we're going to go forward with the project, if you're going to vote okay on the GMP, then we will do the construction, and then we can still reduce the interior scope over that time and still meet our August deadline. So if we bring it to a halt and don't get started, as we actually go into the winter months where we're likely to lose more time, then that's time that gets lost in the spring or the late summer and fall when we're ready to open the school. It becomes more difficult to make that happen. Does that help?
It does. My concern, I guess, is just that so regardless of which option we go with, as long as the decision is made by early February, it would be able to receive children in August.
Correct. As long as we're allowed to continue to, put the
Move
exterior
forward.
up and everything else, because the interior work probably won't start until maybe May or June in terms of, the finishes and those kinds of things.
Ms. Miller?
Yeah, so back in October, we had a $6.8 million cost associated with Prospect Valley for the 8 classrooms, including the 2 special ed classrooms that were going to be, as Mr. Polero said, specifically for those children that are of need that we identified. We had another price in December, last week on the 7th, of about $8.3 million for the same project, from what I understand. So we're back to the $6.8 million which is the contract amount, and that's for the 8 classrooms with the 2 ANs included. And I hear what you're saying about the promises that were made to our families. I would like to pause to wait to see what Enroll Jeffco does provide to us. If it doesn't take 8 classrooms, but takes 6 classrooms. If it doesn't take 8 classrooms, it takes 4 classrooms. I'd like at least that option to think about it, because it's a $32-some million investment in everything that we're doing for all of the 16 schools and the children that are going to those different places. And I think it makes sense to, as you mentioned earlier, Superintendent Dorland, that we do have another phase coming. We are declining enrollment, and how are we being fluid, giving ourselves this space in our CIP to respond to the changes that we didn't necessarily see 6 years ago. And I'd just like to give ourselves that space while still honoring the families that we've talked about. And so if we can give ourselves 30 days, find out how Enroll Jeffco works, keep moving forward as suggested, with that flexibility. And I don't know if that's possible, but that's where I would like to go.
Can you clarify, keep moving forward as suggested? Because I feel like we've talked about multiple ways to keep moving forward.
Well, from what I understand from what Mr. Reed said, in order to realize that we have to be done by September or August of 2023, some components of the construction has to be made. We've already moved ground, have we not, for the foundation? We've already poured stuff for
Foundation work is in.
Right. Some work has already been done. And so I don't want to lose that money. That's an investment that has already been made. I also would like to be able to say, if we don't need all 8 classrooms, and as you said, you could always reduce the amount. What if we only needed the 6 and we could realize some $2 million worth of savings? Could we put that somewhere else for other families at, a place that still has modulars, or a place that is still, in a music? I'm just trying to think how we kind of readjust our CIP while still honoring our promises. That's all I'm asking.
Ms. Parker?
I thought I heard that if we were to approve this contract that's on the consent agenda now for the $6.8 million, that there's still an opportunity to modify the contract. So if it did turn out from enrollment that we didn't need all 8, you could modify it.
That's correct.
Well, how long is the contract 6.8 good for?
It's good through the 6.8 is like the superintendent said, that's the guaranteed maximum price. So as long as we don't change the scope, then that is the maximum amount of money that can be spent.
I think I meant, when I'll get a contract, they'll say this contract is good for 30 days, and after that, we don't promise it'll be the same. We might have to,
If you approve it, it's good through the duration.
So if we didn't approve it and we wanted to approve it at the end of January, will it still be the same amount?
Probably not.
That's what I'm asking. How long is that quote good for?
If we stop the construction and say, okay, so we're not going to start again until, let's say, February 1st, then there's a 6 weeks worth of time lost that the contractor will charge us for. I mean, that's just simply kind of the way the business is. So because what they're looking at is that the project will take them longer into the fall to complete. And their budget is based on the fact that they said they will be done with the project by, I think it's August 1st, actually. And then
Okay. And then I just have a question. We've said that the projection is 568, and it could currently accommodate 576. So why are we even planning 8 classrooms? Why are we even going that high right now for 650 if the projection is 568? Why not the 2 sped classrooms and 2 additional classrooms?
Well,
That's a possibility.
when we designed the building, this was prior to all of this stuff occurring, and we weren't looking at the closure of Color Strand and the closure of Vivian, and some of those kids are going to be at Prospect Valley.
And to Stephanie's point, we're doing this earlier than, we're running our projections based on Allendale and Fitzmaurice behavior patterns, which is about 48% of Color Strand students going to Prospect Valley. But we actually don't know if that's going to be accurate because we are being more supportive of families. They have more time to be thoughtful. We know Vivian is also a very close school that also has been closed. And so we may very well end up higher than Ms. Copeland's projections. And I'm not saying that Ms. Copeland's not going to be right, but she very, very, very may not be right. She might be low.
Before, I thought we heard when we were discussing school closures that typically in Jefferson County, choice was 40%, just typically, without a school closure. And then, I don't know, I don't have your calculator, Director Miller, but if we, even if we over-projected 48 to like 60%, I mean, does it get us to like 600? So still, why are we building a school for 650? Even if we over-project 48 to something much higher, but so different from our average across the county at 40%, I just am wondering why we're building a school for 650 when even at a really high projection, we don't have, I don't know what the number is, around 600 students.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And it leads to what I think the option we're discussing is right now with the board. And that is, you want to say something, Ms. Copeland?
I love it when equations work perfectly. I think what we aren't taking into account is uneven grade levels. And so, yes, in an optimum situation, you may be able to fit 500, but that assumes every single classroom is loaded to exactly the right, and that's not going to happen. And so we would be forcing, effectively, this principal to combine grade levels so that they could have exactly however many 24 kids in a classroom. And I'm just saying, I don't think that's sufficient. I don't think we want to operate any of our buildings at 99.9% of capacity because it doesn't allow for proper variability in the number of students in each grade level.
Yes, and it can also have the effect that we are forced to go over classroom thresholds that we don't want to go over. And some of the feedback we've received from our community around class size is sort of rattling around my mind about that too. So it does provide flexibility. But if we were to build the addition and then make a decision about the interior finish later on, then we could customize it to some of the enrollment numbers we're seeing. I will also just say the enrollment numbers we're seeing in the end of January are a moment in time, and we all know enrollment numbers fluctuate here and there. And Prospect Valley has been a very popular school with lots of families who want to be there. And so, again, being a district that works with its families to serve them where they want their students served, this gives us, that possibility of growing the program at Prospect.
I'd like to add something too. The Prospect Valley is going to have a service life of 50 or 60 years. And in the future, and we don't know what education is going to look like back then or at that time. However, the schools in the general area are already beginning to reach that service life. Slater, Stover, that kind of thing. So there may be future consolidation that ends up at Prospect Valley as well, just because it's going to be a younger school.
Other questions? And just to go back to something that Superintendent Dorland, you said initially, that the count and capacity from a facilities perspective versus from an instructional perspective are different in terms of what functional space do we need for small group work or for interventions or for STEM labs or for whatever it is that is needed. So, and I know that there is an industry standard that it would be wonderful to get to in terms of utilization and how we can be efficient with our buildings, which is really important and is part of this entire effort for efficiencies. And at the same time, for that extraordinary student experience, I think we just have to balance that it is not going to be an exact count of this many students divided by this many equals this many classrooms, because it won't work out that way. At least in my experience with my own children's schools, that those principals and those instructional leaders need to have space to be able to actually provide the exceptional experiences that we want for our students. And that does not mean the grade level classrooms are one part of that. There's a lot of other things that need to happen in those buildings, being mindful of utilization as well.
So I have a question for Ms. Tolleson that I think could be helpful for the board. I've had multiple conversations with many of you about making sure that we as a district staff are accountable to steps that we propose to take in your decision-making process. Is there a way for us to adjust these two approvals to notate that we will come back to the board after Enroll Jeffco closes with three things? Those three things I talked about, the enrollment numbers and the existing contract at 6.8, and another option for your consideration of building out 2, 3, 4, but not 8 classrooms, and what the cost estimates would be for that. I think that we could also just fundamentally, renegotiate the contract and get the contract to the right level at that time if we wanted to, just so it's all clear and clean with the contractor, but we can work on that later. I just think it would be helpful if the board were to approve this tonight to notate this robust conversation around pros and cons that they've had and their expectation that we're coming back to them with something for further decision making.
You could do that. I think the clearest way to do it would be to remove it from consent, and then the motion would specifically capture the idea that you're approving the contract with an anticipation return for possible adjustments to the scope of work based on those data points in late January. Something like that you would capture it for transparency and clarity that way.
Yep. Like, does that work in practice? With contractors, can you say, hey, our board did this, we're going to wait a month and then we're going to come back and we might move it around? And I just want to make sure that we're not saying, let's do this thing, and then we try to do it, and then we're told oh, we were locked in, we had this thing, now it's 9 million, can we actually implement what we just described?
And that's going to be a good question for Mr. Reed, right? Because that's where the legal and the practical start to intersect. My understanding is, you're talking about maybe changing things that are on the interior finish kind of level that would be adjusted, but I'm going to look at him for the rest of that.
The advantage of the CMG process is not only it saves time, but it gives you the flexibility throughout the construction project to really kind of work the project, having the architect and the contractor on board at approximately the same time really creates more of a collaborative approach to the design. So we can go in, again, we have a top set number here, but if we reduce scope, the price will come down. If we add scope, the price will go up.
Okay, then, thank you. The reason I like that is because one thing that we don't have a choice on is that we have 2 classrooms and classrooms that have to be built. There's no choice because I'm going to say this and it seems obvious, but we've said we would move a center knowing we didn't have the classrooms for it. So we have to do that. And then but I don't see why necessarily, I'm still not convinced we need the 6 classrooms. So as long as we have to build those 2 with this contractor. So as long as we're able to then cut back on the others, if the number stays at 550, then we can do that. And if that works, that seems reasonable to me.
Are the other recommendations, Superintendent Dorland, ones that you need us to discuss as well? For example, hey, do we want to come up and do a study session in January or February on the balance of the other, our other schools and prioritization of premium and other CIP considerations? Since, we have, not that we're shifting sands, because that's not a fair statement, but there are shifts that have taken place since we first went out for the 2018 bond.
Yeah, I think in particular, getting the board's general direction on the center program investments and pre-K is important so that our team has, authority to continue that work. And then when you get the contracts, you're not surprised that we've continued that work. And Mr. Reed, when do you anticipate the Stober contract?
We're looking at having a GMP for that project in February.
Okay, so we would that would allow them, if they did this study session related solely to CIP, some of these investments, and just contemplating this program given declining enrollment, that would give you time to also study Stober before it's in front of you for decision making in February. So yeah, all 3 of these things I think would be good for the board to let us know if there's consensus or a majority interest in these recommendations from me.
So why don't we, unless there are other questions specific to these things, I'm just going to go down the list to get some consensus or some at least majority so we can help folks move forward. So around the construction related to center programs, PK classrooms, is there a general level of support from the board? Thumbs up would work at this point, to be able to continue to move forward. Great. That's good. All done. So around the special study session, is everyone amenable to finding a time where we can come back and have those discussions in late January? Great, thumbs are everywhere. And then the last one is the 2 that are on the consent agenda, the 2 items, 8.13 and 8.19, specific to Prospect Valley. What I have heard is we can pull those off consent, create a separate agenda item for those 2 for approval with language included that will be written during a break that we're going to take so that I don't have to say it out loud, but whatever she said. Is that? We'll work with Julie on language aligned to our expectations. Are we? Great. All right. So we're going to take a break so we can get that work done. And then do you all have what you need in order to move forward with the things that are on there?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Just one other, nope, I'm not going to ask it now. I'm going to wait. I just want to reassure our communities and our building leadership that what we are doing is balancing our stewardship of these CIP dollars in the best interest of kids with the commitments that we've made. And I know that the ripple effects of one comment made by one board member goes directly into our communities and impacts choices that families make. And I've seen it too many times to not want to just scream from the rooftops that we are honoring our commitments to our families and that we're having these discussions to be responsible in our role, not to pull back support for what we have committed to our kids. So put that out there really clearly, hopefully. Call me if you need me to say it again, please. Okay.
Maybe we could have that in some way, shape, or form in that consent agenda item that's pulled.
We sure can, because Julie was just listening to everything I say, and Ms. Tollison's going to put it in there.
Thank you.
Wonderful. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll reconvene to move forward with our agenda in 7 minutes at 7:10, and we're good to go. Okay, welcome back. Our apologies for the delay. We're going to move on to approval of our consent agenda. All consent agenda items are presented in board docs as proposed. Do I have a request to remove any items from the consent agenda?
I move that we remove 8.13 and 8.19 from the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Okay, it has been moved and seconded to remove consent agenda items 8.13 and 8.19 from the consent agenda, right?
No, it's not 8.13. It's 8.14 and 8.20.
Oh, my apologies. My sheet is wrong then.
I want to make sure.
Yep, we're going to double check so we get the right items.
I have 8.20 is professional services and 8.14 is the GMP. So that's those.
We're going to go ahead and do the motion over again so it reflects. Oh,
It's just, I'm removing because the consent agendas.
great.
Okay, so now I'm confused. Do I say I move to approve the consent agenda as posted in board docs with the removal of 8.14 and 8.20?
There are many ways to slice it, and that's one of them.
Wonderful. Is
Well,
there a
then that
second?
is what I move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda with the removal of 8.14 and 8.20. Roll call, please, Ms. Lang.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Ms. Schooley,
Yes.
Dr. Varda.
Yes.
Okay, with regard to items 8.14 and 8.20 that were removed from the consent agenda, this board acknowledges the commitment made to the community through the Regional Opportunities for Thriving Schools Phase 1 process to create exceptional student experiences across the district. The board also wants to ensure good stewardship of our CIP funds in our decision making. So I move to approve these contracts for the addition to Prospect Valley as planned, including the build out of 2 effective needs center-based classrooms. As part of this approval, the board directs district staff to bring additional information after the first round of enrolled Jeffco for direction on possible reduction in scope or timeline for the full interior build-out. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? It has been approved and seconded to do that, what I said. That will be recorded in the minutes. Roll call, please, Ms. Lang.
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
Ms. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Reed,
Yes.
Ms. Schooley,
Yes.
Dr. Varda.
Yes.
Great, thank you, board. All right, we will be moving on now to the next item, which is a superintendent contract extension. I would like to remind everyone that the superintendent's most recent evaluation and all of the goals stated that the board will be evaluating, by which the board will be evaluating the superintendent, are uploaded into board docs and can be found in the consent. I know that there was some confusion over where we could find those goals, and they are all listed there. Do I have a motion to approve the extension of Superintendent Dorland's contract for 3 years, expiring on June 30th, 2027?
I move to approve the extension of Superintendent Dorland's contract for 3 years to June 30th of 2027.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, board? Director Reed?
I just want to clarify for folks who have written over the last few days. I think there's somehow a perception out there that this means that there's no accountability for the superintendent in this time period, that she can do whatever she wants and there will be, no accountability for that. So I really want to clarify that each year of any contract, whether it's the one we started with, you could extend it for 15 years, it wouldn't matter. Each year is contingent upon a satisfactory performance review for the year before. And so I do think it's important that folks realize that that is part of the process here. I also want to just express my personal feeling that I feel really confident that we're headed in the right direction, and so I feel confident in making this extension. But I do want to also reassure the public that this does not mean that there's no longer any board oversight.
Thank you. Other thoughts and comments, discussion for this item? Director Parker?
Yes, I also want to say that I'm very confident that we're moving in the right direction and we're doing good things. And from my visits to schools this year, I've had many administrators and staff members tell me that they are so appreciative of the clarity of the process, of the priorities that the school district has now. They feel, for the first time in many years, that things will stay in alignment, and we're on the right path, and they don't have to worry that things are going to be changing and going 180 degrees in different directions. So I am very confident of our superintendent and the way we work together with her.
Thank you, Director Parker. Any other? Director Barta?
I also am pleased with our direction, and I was thinking about some things like, and I don't know how many people would know this, like if we really told the story of things like teacher raises and the work that we did there. Superintendent Dorland was really a champion in that, and really putting out there really high expectations around that. And that's when I knew, okay, she's very kid focused, very teacher focused. So I always thought that was a really good, indicator of where we were going. And when you all suggested the school closures, that you came back with 16 was an indicator to me, okay, this is a systems thinker who wants to tackle big problems with really big solutions, because I would have been disappointed had we said this is 2 schools, because I would say, well, we're not really addressing the problem. So it's given me confidence in different ways. And one thing I want to clarify is today was a good example of things that come up and they're difficult and we may not even all agree on them, but I think today is a good example of Superintendent Dorland being really transparent with us and saying, I want to make sure that you all have information to make good decisions, even if it's, at risk of saying, look, we may not look as perfect as we hope we do. So I think it's really good governance if we have the ability to have disagreements, to have hard conversations, and to be questioning each other all the time. I find really healthy. So I know it can sound a lot of, this happens, I had a retreat today with my own company, and we were talking about healthy conflict and feedback as a gift. And I think that has made me feel comfortable over the last year. So we may not agree on all the things, but I do feel confident that we'll be able to work through things.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Director Miller.
Yeah, I would like to say that, I think we all know that over the past 10 years, we've had, 5 or 6 superintendents that I think was mentioned earlier that when somebody comes in, it's disruptive. They start their own vision process again. And I think when the previous board hired Superintendent Dorland, there were a multitude of challenges before us. I think we spoke to you about a turnaround in Jefferson County. We knew that there was enrollment challenges. We knew that we did not have alignment with our academic reading and math and the work and the competencies that we were supposed to be focusing on. Those were not where we were focusing. And I think the comment about the teachers' contracts, being able to build back relationships. I know we still have fiscal challenges in that area, and I'm not going to go through that. But in my world, that's a focus that I think we're going to have to address. But I also want to say to people that in the past, we did not have benchmarks or accountability for our superintendent. It was maybe back when Ms. Hammond was here, Superintendent Hammond was here, that there was actual benchmarks of, the effectiveness of how we were moving our children. And I think this board took a very thoughtful position and said, no, we have learning losses. We know that we need to be moving the bar for our kids. And this is the benchmark that we're focusing on for reading. This is the benchmark we're focusing on for math and where we need to be going. And this is the focus where we need to be thinking about our investments and what the exceptional children's learning is going to be. And how do we move to become the world-class district that we want to have for our children. And so there are many different moving pieces. I think, I would always love to be more focused on 3 or 4, realizing though that we have more that we have to work on. So I'm hopeful that the next 3 years, the partnership of this board and superintendent and staff keeps our eye on the ball, which is focused on students and where we've got to take them and carry them. And I appreciate the work that you're doing with us. And I'm looking forward to continue moving in that direction.
Great. So to round us out, I too share in a sense of it, and it's not necessarily joy, because we have asked as a board, we've asked you to do some really hard things, and we've directed you to do some really hard things. And I think some of the hardest that a superintendent and cabinet and staff have to do, which it puts you in a very visible place for the work that we're doing, the joy and the struggle of those things. And I appreciate that that's a vulnerable place to be, and you handle it with a lot of grace. So thank you for that, and for helping us to reach some shared goals that are a long time coming in a lot of senses. To be able to get all kids where we want them to be is really important, and I take great pride in serving with you. Is there any other discussion before we move into a vote? Hearing none. Roll call, please. Ms. Lang.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Reed?
Yes.
Ms. Schooley?
Yes.
Dr. Varda?
Yes.
Great. It has been approved. We move into our last pieces of our agenda for this evening, leadership reports, both from the superintendent and from us as board members, to help inform one another on what we have been doing and or hearing from our community members to keep each other updated. Superintendent Dorland, I'll turn it over to you for your leadership report.
Thank you, President Schooley. I am going to be brief this evening and just express my gratitude to the board for the last agenda item and your decision to extend my contract. I love being the superintendent of Jeffco Public Schools. It has been a challenging leadership role, but it's also been extremely joyful. And the best parts are being in schools and attending celebrations, oftentimes with many of you. And so I'm just incredibly grateful and want to let you know that I feel like you just gave me the best Christmas present. That is the holiday that we celebrate in my household. And I respect all winter holidays that are celebrated in our community. But for me, it's a Christmas gift that you just gave me. And I want to say thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Is there a board member that would like to go first in sharing what they have been up to of late? Or I'll adjourn the meeting. Don't push me. I'll do it. Director Parker.
Well, this is a really wonderful time of year, so I've enjoyed visiting schools and seeing all the decorations they have on the walls. Excuse me, and attending some of the choral events, and it was fun tonight to hear the elementary school singers. So it's a very joyful time of year for that, and I am excited to get into the schools. I also got to see the Powderhorn cutting the ribbon for their addition in their school. So lots of good things going on now.
Thank you. Director Parker. It's Parker. She's there. You're there. Director Barta.
I was trying to remember from the last board meeting to now, and it's a little challenging because it's just been so busy. But I don't know if we mentioned, some of us went to the, I forgot, the area choir? No, not the area.
It was the senior high honor choir.
At Pomona, and saw high school seniors. Is it the senior? Oh,
senior high.
Senior high.
So it was all of the high schools, but
I was like, I didn't think they were. So the high school, but students from all different high schools came together to sing, and it was so fun. They wore their colors, and it was just a really great celebration, and it was nice to see them on the Pomona stage as well. And I've been to endless choir and band and dance, which isn't school, but concerts even just this week, and had a chance. This is, I feel like, the season when we're in the schools, and the band and our AMP teams are just showing off like in all kinds of ways with the art and music that's coming out of the schools. So, and I've done a couple of school visits and been able to meet with during some faculty meetings of teachers, and that's been really meaningful to just get even 5 minutes with them to have a conversation and hear what their questions are and what their needs are and their hopes and dreams for the work that we have going forward. So I really appreciate the principals who have given me those few minutes to do that with and get to know some of our staff a little bit better than I have been able to before. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Reed, bless you.
So I want to just add one more thing about that choir concert that was really special, and that was listening to the choir directors sing. So they all got up and performed as well, and it was just super special. So I very much enjoyed that concert. And the other thing that I want to mention was the weekend that we spent at Casby. And it was such a different experience because last year I just felt so over my head. We had just gotten sworn in. And so, last year was great to go to the 101 level classes and kind of, find out school finance and stuff. But this year, to be able to choose things that I was interested in was wonderful. There was a keynote speaker that I'm tracking down Superintendent Dorland afterwards saying, how do we make this systemic? Because, he just kind of got me fired up and sort of restarted that educator's heart that I have. And I had wonderful conversations with people from other school boards and other school districts. And some of those conversations were actually pretty intense. And so it was just a wonderful experience. Plus, the Broadmoor is beautiful this time of year. So it was lovely.
Thank you. Director Miller?
I just want to say thank you to the schools that I was able to visit over the past number of weeks. And then I wish everybody a very peaceful holiday. And I hope everybody comes back rested. And I know I'm going to sleep.
That's right. Yep. I will just say it has been, we have been spending a lot of time together as a board and superintendent team over the last few weeks with the Colorado Association of School Boards annual conference and then other meetings that we've had together. And I appreciate the level of engagement and time that each of you commit to doing this because it is significant amount away from other responsibilities. So I appreciate that service. And I'm just going to end it with, I too hope everyone has a really peaceful and restorative holiday break, winter break. I think everyone probably needs it, and a healthy dose of gratitude for all of you, for the staff, cabinet, all of the folks that are in our schools, for taking such good care of our kids, our collective kids. And we'll see you in the new year. We will stand adjourned until our study session. That is January 11th of the new year. Everyone, please be safe, and peace be with you all.